Hi, I'm Jennifer Martinez, the staff writer at GigaOM, and here with me is Max Ventilla, who's the co-founder of Aardvark. So Max, we just finished up with the new net talk this morning. What were your biggest takeaways?
So there were three sections. The first was about all of the data that is essentially coming online now, not least from everyone's mobile device starting to be GPS enabled. And I think the takeaway was one that we're really early in more and more metadata being associated with every bit of content online, especially anything that people take with a mobile phone, and very, very rich functionality that you can create if you know the identity of the person that took this picture and where they were and exactly when they took it, and you can really start to make a much richer web that points back to the real world versus something that just exists online. There was a section on user experience where I think the sort of main takeaway is to see what people are doing with your apps and really promote the activity that people want to do, and focus your very limited resources there. And you see companies like Facebook and companies like Twitter using the ecosystem not just to increase the value of what they've built, but also to see what are sort of the next things that they should be working on. And the final section on serendipity, I think was sort of more scattered, but ultimately about the notion that when you have humans involved in every bit of content and you have interactions taking place between people as the sort of primary activity enabled by applications, there's a lot more that can go right and a lot more that can go wrong. And in fact, it becomes much more challenging to develop apps that can create serendipity in the right way and ultimately let users frame their own experience and not be shut down by privacy issues or other things that would prohibit you from engaging in an application.
And at Aardvark, so basically, Aardvark lets you on your iPhone and now on the web, and then also through an IM program, tap into your social graph and ask any type of question that you want, whether it's about restaurants or books or travel. So, how are you guys incorporating some of the things that were talked about this morning into your service?
So, first, we very actively use all of these applications. So the fact that they are open to third-party developers, taking advantage of the social graph data that's been created or the communication channels that people are using, that's how Aardvark works. We take all that profile and social graph data, we index the people that you're connected to, and then when you ask a question, we route that to the right person to answer. It's not sort of broadcast out. It's very much about serendipity and creating interactions where magical, unexpected things happen, and bad things are very unlikely to happen. Ultimately, I think using more of the metadata that's coming online and getting ourselves in a position where we can take advantage of this huge growth in not just the content that people author, but the context around that content, so that we can figure out better what questions to route to you, what questions we should route, who we should route your questions to. I think that's a big opportunity, and it's great that the underlying players are ultimately collecting all this information and then allowing smaller players to build on top of it.
So, based on the healthy debate that was happening here at GigaOM during this morning, what things do you think going forward we're going to see in terms of the next web and real-time information?
So I think we're likely to see some of the big players start to put more information out there, be pushed to provide cleaner notions of who's the identity of the person that authored this, whether it's on Facebook or Twitter or on the web at large. I think that you're going to see probably a struggle play out whether or not the big companies are willing to sort of bear the privacy impacts of getting more rather than information out there. And I think that for startups, you're probably going to see them being forced to build more and more on top of the existing players, but there's sort of always going to be this question of what's the value that they're providing. I think a lot of people in the room are looking at where a startup fits into the ecosystem and how, especially across different platforms, they can work on a problem that no one else is working on and not sort of duplicate efforts of other startups or duplicate something that the platform is also eventually going to integrate. Jason Schellen at Brisley had an interesting set of comments about sort of what it's like to build on top of the Twitter ecosystem and ways in which you can actually add functionality that has nothing to do with that ecosystem, but use the sort of enormous user base and the enormous momentum behind certain types of behaviors as a springboard for some other new type of innovation. And I think that might increasingly be sort of the wave of the future, is take a lot of what one of these existing platforms is doing, but then build on it in a different direction that might have nothing to do with the underlying functionality of Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn or any of the big players.
And I know it's going to be hard to pick one thing, but what was one thing said this morning that got you really excited? What was the most exciting thing that was said this morning to you?
So I think you hear it all the time, but the fact that you have now hundreds of millions of GPS-enabled mobile phones, and that the bandwidth, especially within the next few years, is going to be on a totally different level. And as is generally the case where you have a big step up, it's not an incremental increase in activity. It's sort of a quantum leap in terms of what people are doing, and the fact that it's mainstream. I think that's really exciting in terms of mobile. Something I hadn't quite thought of is the extent to which GPS data is going to being built into computers as well. So when you think about laptops and when you think about browsers, even on desktops, using the IP information, using, for example, the kind of Wi-Fi triangulation to establish exactly where you are, there's really exciting location-specific applications that then just work. And I don't think we've really started to see any of those cutting-edge local applications built not for mobile, but built for normal computer use.
Okay. And then to cap it all off, last week you guys launched Vark.com, the social search site version of Aardvark. Can you talk a little bit more about what we're going to be seeing from you in the next year?
Sure. So Aardvark is very much about connecting people so that they can have a live conversation. So when you ask a question, the majority of the time, you get connected to someone within minutes, and you're having a live interaction where you might be on one IM network and they might be answering on another IM network or their iPhone or another communication channel. We see ourselves continuing to grow in that space of connecting people across any device for these one-off interactions that might lead to a variety of social purposes. So it's about sharing information, but it's about sharing information with another person who you have some prior connection to, and increasingly tying back into all of the places where you have profile and social graph data is our main focus, and giving you more value out of social applications that you already use through this added functionality, which is now all of a sudden you can fire something off and have the right person put in front of you for you to be interacting with in that moment. That's sort of a big space where we don't see other people playing, and where we see being able, in the context of today, adding a lot of incremental value given what other people have already built up online.
So does that mean expanding to other mobile platforms other than iPhone?
Absolutely. So we want to work on any device. We want to work on any communication channel. We see a very direct correlation between the number of channels that someone is using Aardvark through and the amount of their use, the value of the product to them. So it's not like, oh, if it works over email, you're not going to use it over other channels, in the same way that you and I might connect over half a dozen different channels depending on where I am and what's my situation. We see the same thing playing out with Aardvark, and we really want to support that. So this is very much the tip of the iceberg in terms of all the different platforms we intend to support.
Great. Cool. Well, I'll look out for that. So thanks so much, Max. Really appreciate it. And thanks so much for listening.